Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Celebration of Life service for our beloved Deane Downey. I'm Deane and Margaret's pastor. I've been their pastor at certain epochs of their lives, and it's my privilege to lead us in this service. And we have been praying that it will help us grieve in a healthy way for the one we love. A memory I have of Deane is his willingness to be involved in the prayer walk we had for our community in Abbotsford here a number of years ago in the early 2000s. As an elder of Seven Oaks Alliance Church, at that time, he helped by leading a group of our community into the city hall and courts, where we prayed for wisdom and efficiency for our city leaders and judges. Other groups prayed at different sites, at fire halls, theaters, schools, faith centers. For unity, they prayed for wisdom in decision-making, for peace and collaboration, and efficiency in operation. And they prayed overall for the community's benefit at that time. And you know, at that time, it really hit me. His desire to see our city working well for the benefit of all, it stays with me today. Deane impacted our lives in a positive way on several fronts, including loving and providing for his family, serving in his church in the areas of leadership, education, and music, and in the wider community in the realm of education, equipping young adults for serving their communities in impactful ways, much as he did himself. His passing has left a hole in our hearts that only God can fill, and we long to be reunited with him. And through the hope of the resurrection of Jesus, in whom Deane believed, that's a certainty which will sustain us until we meet again. Let's pray together. Lord, we thank you that you know your children and you know what they're going through right here and now. And we read of you, you're a person of sorrows, acquainted with grief, and you know at this moment what we are experiencing. So please come alongside each one of us and bring comfort and peace in Christ's name, and help us to receive the spiritual inheritance that Deane has left us. Amen. There are quite a few participants in today's service because Deane touched a lot of lives, and we're grateful for that. And they're going to participate, and they'll come up unannounced and introduce themselves and help us in our memory of Deane.
Good afternoon, everyone. We're so happy that you're here with us today. It's such a privilege to have already connected with many of you, and we are deeply grateful that you can be here. So thank you. We are going to read the eulogy. Might be interesting to know that our dad had thought through some of the thoughts he would like to have shared per his eulogy, being the planner that he is. And so we took what he had written and we added a few things, and so hopefully this will just give you a real sense of some of the history of his life and what was important to him. So it is with a mixture of both sadness and gratitude that my family and I welcome you today to the celebration of life of Deane Ernest David Downey, or to Dave and I, our dad. We are grateful for everyone that is with us today, both in body and in spirit. And we have so appreciated all the kind words and reflections that have been sent our way since Dad left us.
I'm David, Deane's favorite son, and I'm also pleased to be here on this sad occasion to share it with all of you who loved him. Friends and family, I like to say family you choose, and he loved all of them, and that was something that was very evident in his life for as long as we knew him. It's wonderful to be back in this sanctuary Some of you might remember my antics on this stage at one time were a little less within decorum, so I'll hope to try to be better than that today. We are, as Debbie mentioned, pleased that Dad helped to put this together to share it with you, and certainly wouldn't be in my character if we didn't take a little license with the information and supplement it where necessary. So go ahead, Deb.
So Dad is survived by his loving wife, Margaret, Dave and I, and our spouses, Mike and Shelley, his grandchildren, Matthew, Madison, Timothy, and Lauren. Deane is also survived by his siblings, Raymer Downey and his wife, Viola, Lois Westerland, who was married to Ken for many years, Lucy Rushton, who was married to Bruce for many years, and Glennie Tweedle, and my Uncle Deane. Dad was predeceased by his siblings, Neil Downey, whose wife is Angela, and Stanford Downey, whose wife is Patricia, and also his mother, Edna, in 2011, and Murray, his father, in 1992. Dad always relished his visits with his 6 siblings and their partners and families.
Dad was born on April 27th, 1940 in Grand Prairie, Alberta. The next year, he decided to accompany his younger brother, Raymer, and their parents, Murray and Edna Downey, to Regina, Saskatchewan, where his father became one of the founding faculty members of Western Canadian Bible Institute, later renamed Canadian Bible College, which many years later moved to a warmer climate in Calgary, Alberta, and was renamed Ambrose University.
After completing all of his elementary and high school education in Regina, in 1958, Dad had the good fortune to win a major undergraduate scholarship to study at McGill University in Montreal, where he completed a general studies BA degree with honors and minors in English and classical Greek. During a 2-year interlude working for the federal government's Department of Finance in Ottawa, he decided to pursue an academic career in university-level teaching. He earned an MA in English at the University of Toronto beginning there in 1965. But of even more importance, especially to Dave and I, this is where he met the love of his life, our mom, Margaret Stevenson, during his 2-year sojourn in Ottawa. They accomplished their 1967 centennial project by marrying that summer, then heading for Regina to begin a teaching stint at Canadian Bible College, where his father had been already teaching since 1941. In adjacent offices for 3 years, Dad enjoyed serving as faculty colleague with his dad. After teaching for 3 years at CBC, Dad continued his professorial preparation by entering a PhD program in English at the University of Alberta in Edmonton.
As you can see, it's not hard to tell that Dad wrote this, some of the words. Dad's favorite child, Deborah Shannon, was born in August 1968. And David Stephen appeared on the scene in February of 1971 during their first year in Edmonton. Having completed all of the doctoral studies requirements save for the dissertation by the end of August 1973, Dad accepted a teaching position at then Trinity Western College, a 2-year junior college in Langley, BC. He successfully completed his doctoral work the following summer. His doctoral dissertation title was National Identity and Recent Canadian Fiction, 1965 to 73. I'm sure you've all read it. It was interesting that Dad did his doctorate as one of the first people to do it using the computer lab at the University of Alberta. And there's a story behind that and how he was able to make the edits for his doctoral people that were overseeing his doctorate, and how he was able to make the edits so quickly because of the computer lab. And when I say computer lab, of course, I mean scan cards. What began as a modest association with this relatively new 2-year liberal arts and science college became a 31-and-a-half-year career for Dad, who also contributed to the evolution of TW into the university of which he was very proud. In January of the second year at TWC, he agreed to serve as acting academic dean. The new president, Dr. Neil Snyder, came to TWC with a vision to expand the two-year college into a four-year degree-granting university. During the 20 months of his tenure as acting Deane, he and Dr. Snyder hired a total of 17 new faculty members, strengthening departments that appeared to be the most capable of developing majors, and adding 2 new programs in business administration and aviation. Within a few short years, the provincial legislature granted permission for the institution to offer 4-year degrees in a number of subject areas and to amend its name to Trinity Western University.
Over the course of Dad's time at Trinity, he had the opportunity to hold a number of leadership positions: Chair of the Department of English, Dean of the Humanities Division, Dean of Academic Administration, Dean of Undergraduate Studies, Acting Academic Vice President on 2 further occasions, and at the time of his retirement in 2004, Associate Academic Vice President. In spite of the heavy load involved in these various administrative positions, Dad taught at least 1 and sometimes 2 English courses during that time, not only to keep current, but also to demonstrate to his colleagues and students his commitment to the profession. The Board of Governors recognized Dad's contributions by granting him on his retirement with the honorary title of Professor Emeritus of English and Interdisciplinary Studies.
Dad continued his involvement with TW in several ways after his retirement. He played second violin and later viola for 12 years in TW's orchestra. He and fellow retirees helped to establish the TW Retirees Association for long-term faculty and staff. He helped the registrar's office for several months with graduation audits, covering for a person who was on a long-term sick leave. He served the provost's office in verifying faculty applications for scholarly activity salary points. He chaired a committee established to verify the consistency of ESL admission standards and practices between 2 separate entry points. And he served on a couple of promotion committees to replace a person who would normally have been a member of that committee.
You can hear Dad's attention to detail in some of these things.
I'm sure he left a lot out.
Yeah.
Bear with us on this list. Dad taught summer English courses at a number of academic institutions in addition to TW and CBC. These included St. Petersburg Christian University in St. Petersburg, Russia, the English Language Institute, Canadian Free Church in Dnepropetrovsk, in the Ukraine, let's put it that way. Atlantic Baptist University, Charlbury in Oxford, England. I'm sporting a tie today that Dad, I think, purchased from that university. I think I'm allowed to wear it because it was my dad's, even though I didn't go to Oxford. Tianjin University of Technology, Tianjin Foreign Studies University. You'll see in your programs there's some inserts from some of Dad's colleagues about that initiative. Regent College in Vancouver. During the stay of that in the summer, we stayed at a friend's, one of his colleagues' houses who was having sabbatical somewhere else. And I believe that's where Deb and I discovered Elton John, but that's another story. UBC, go Thunderbirds, Dave. University of Ottawa, University of Regina, and University of Alberta. You can take a big breath now.
Dad co-edited 2 books during his professional teaching career, one with his English department colleague, Dr. Barbara Pell, The Little Brown Handbook, the other with the president and dean of McMaster Divinity College, Dr. Stanley Porter, Christian Worldview and the Academic Disciplines Crossing the Academy. In spite of his busy academic life, Dad contributed in a number of ways to his home community of Abbotsford during his 50-plus years there. He served as a trustee on the Abbotsford School Board and for shorter terms on the Clearbrook Recreation Commission Board and Fraser Valley Regional Library Board. He also played second violin and later the viola with the Fraser Valley Symphony for approximately 20 years. Dad enjoyed a rich retirement with Mom. He loved spending time and family time with us, as well as with his grandchildren, Matthew, Madison, Tim, and Lauren. Many high-stakes games of Scrabble and Monopoly were played over the years. His life was also enriched by his book club friends, Roy and Carol Daly, Helmut and Gerda Fandrich, Paul and Rennie Forrest, and Arnie and Sharon Hoskin. Over their years together, the group met monthly, beginning in December 1983. Over that time, a total of 350 books were read, and tracked via a bibliographic record that Helmut Fandrich put together. All throughout, the friends shared meals and supported one another through the challenges and celebrations of life.
Dad tried to stay in good physical health by daily walking, you know that's a must if you're mom's partner, and playing pickleball 2 or 3 times a week. The pandemic resulted in a curtailment of the latter activity at Abbotsford Recreation Centre. He missed both the physical activity and the conversation with other pickleball enthusiasts from all walks of life. In addition, Dad was a dedicated swimmer, completing regular visits to local pools to complete his 30 lengths, followed by a little hot tub soak. Dad relished time with his family, and despite a busy schedule of work and civic duties, always found time to spend socially with Mom. Deb treasured the evenings where she could spend alone time caring for her dear brother, and also at regular family outings. The Vancouver Symphony, Vancouver Playhouse were often visited, as well as nature outings to the wonderful opportunities afforded by the family living in the Fraser Valley and the Lower Mainland. In addition, there were multiple trips with trailers and tents across Canada to Ottawa to visit the Stevenson relatives in the summers. Dad was always amazed at how Deb and Dave got along so well during those days traversing the Canadian landscape. Truly a miracle.
Mom and Dad gave so much to us, but they also enjoyed social time with their families of origin as often as time would allow. They also created many precious memories with their friends, so many of whom are here today. Dad's role as Dr. Downey was one he valued, but his most treasured roles were that of husband, father, and grandpa. Over the past few weeks, we have loved hearing many stories and memories shared about your own interactions with and memories of our dad, and we thank you for that. On the night that Dad was admitted to hospital for what would be the last time, after being with him for several hours, Mom and I went to let him know that we were going to head home to get some sleep. He looked at us and he smiled and he said, "I love my family. I'll see you in heaven." We feel your absence and miss you so deeply, Dad, and we look forward with anticipation and hope to the day when we will all be together again.
Thank you.
I'm more David's height than Deb's, but it sounds like the sound's going to be okay. My name's Dave Squires. I was a colleague of, oh, Carol, you okay? I was a colleague of Deane's at Trinity Western University, and you know, my wife Colette and I have so many memories of Deane and Marg, so many different times in our life, so many different kinds of experiences. You've heard about music, classical music. Deane played under me as I was conducting Fraser Valley Symphony for a few years. He played played violin in orchestras which performed some of my music, and we engaged on that level. Church ministry here, the years that I was at Seven Oaks here, Deane actually was instrumental in us coming to Seven Oaks in 1998, and so many things like that. And then traveling together. Deane and Marg traveled with Colette and myself to Europe, and I was really pleased that there are some words in the bulletin that we have today from the folks in China. You know, just last year, we were in China with the Trinity Choir, and folks there were talking about Deane, just singing his praises and just how much they appreciated him. So Professor Lee and others who were represented in some of those words that were shared in the bulletin. So that's just a great sense of legacy, just tremendous. Deane had a real hand in my life as a young faculty member. I came to Trinity Western in 1981. I was 4. Don't believe everything. But Deane and his whole generation of faculty that were a generation at least ahead of me had a hand in leading my own growth. And we celebrated Jack Van Dyke's passing recently, and I think of this whole generation of people who had such a hand in the development of young faculty. I remember one particular occasion when it was early in my time there when I got a memo, and back in those days you got memos in the mail, they were paper. You remember paper? We wrote on it. And this memo said that the faculty meeting had been canceled because of a paucity of agenda items. P-A-U-C-I-T-Y. I had to go look it up. And apparently it's got the same root as the word pauper, which means poor. I thought, okay, so there are no agenda items. Why did you just say that? Well, because Deane. You put an English prof in charge of writing a memo, like, you get the best word possible. So I got to admit, I've not used the word paucity between then and now. But I may use it again later, who knows. But that was Deane, and I thought, okay, welcome to the Academy as a young faculty member. Welcome to a professor doing what he or she does best. And speaking of which, was already referenced by you folks, but this book is also out in the foyer. I've got my own copy, Christian Worldview and the Academic Disciplines. One of the two books that were referred to that he co-edited, 29 essays in here by Christian colleagues that he either worked with or knew in other institutions, most of them from Trinity Western. And that worldview, the word worldview, that was huge for Deane. And I love that word, and I love that sort of memory of how that word played out in Deane's thinking and his speaking, his teaching, his leadership in administrative world, viewing the world in certain ways. How do we view the world? How do we view the world? And he viewed the world in the context of God. And we're going to sing in a minute. And Marg wrote to me, we were chatting on email about this hymn. She wanted me to lead Great is Thy Faithfulness with all of us singing today. And she said, great is thy faithfulness can set a framework. I'm going to quote you here, Marg. I hope you don't mind. Be careful what you write in an email. Someone may quote it publicly with a microphone. But anyway, she said, this hymn can set a framework for this today, this shared sacred experience that we'll move through together. It's a familiar hymn. The words and melody Deane loved. It was thoughtful, full of good thought. And years ago, he actually suggested that this might be a good thing to include in a service of remembrance. So we're going to be doing that. And Mark says that it threaded its way through every season of his life, steadying, guiding, comforting, reassuring, reminding, even alongside the many hard to understand things that were part of the final lap that led to his crossing the finish line. Think of the words, there is no shadow of turning with thee. All I have needed, thy hand has provided. Pardon for sin and a peace that endureth. Thine own dear presence. Is there anything better than that? Thine own dear presence to cheer and to guide. Strength for today, and bright hope for tomorrow. Blessings all mine, all ours, with 10,000 beside. This was his world view. I love it. I love it. I love that we're singing it. Summer and winter, I had a thought that I passed on to Mark. Summer and winter and springtime and harvest. We go through the cycle of life. And I was reminded of how we say at our wedding vows, in sickness and in health, for richer, for poorer, till death do us part. We don't really think too much at the age of 20 or 22 or 24. We don't think too much about this day when we say those words. Sickness and health, rich or poor, till death do us part. They kind of roll off the tongue at the age of 22. They did for me. I didn't know anything when I married Colette, except that I loved her. But these things roll off our tongue, and yet later on they become rich reminders of the stuff of life. And we're saying farewell to colleagues in this season. I've mentioned that already. And some of us older faculty members are looking around at some of our colleagues, and we know the ones who are gone already. And then the rest of us were thinking, well, are we next? But that's summer and winter, springtime and harvest. The seasons come around and they go. One of my favorite lines in a favorite movie that I have, the character says, recently I've become very much aware that there are fewer days ahead than there are behind. And I feel like we often rush headlong through our career years, our family building years, and we're living largely in the present, in the very urgent present. We don't often think about that day when there are fewer days ahead than there are behind. But great is thy faithfulness in all days, in the days of the past, in today, and the days to come. Are they not? Would you stand? And I'm asking you to stand because, if you can, because standing is a means of saying, yes, yes, I'm going to proclaim this. If you can't stand today, that's good. Stand in your heart. But let's sing and proclaim, great is the faithfulness of our God. Great is thy faithfulness. Great is thy faithfulness, O God, my Father. There is no shadow of turning with thee. Thou changest not, thy compassions, they fail not. As thou hast been, thou forever wilt be. Great is thy faithfulness, great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. All I have needed, thy hand hath provided. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me. Summer and winter and springtime and harvest, sun, moon, and stars in their courses above, join with all nature in manifold witness to thy great faithfulness, mercy, and love. Great is thy faithfulness, great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. All I have needed, thy hand hath provided. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me. Pardon for sin and a peace that endureth. Thine own dear presence to cheer and to guide. Strength for today and bright hope for tomorrow. Blessings all mine with 10,000 beside. Oh, great is thy faithfulness, great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. All I have needed, thy hand hath provided. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me. Thanks so much, Carol. Please have a seat.
I'm Raymer Downey. I'm the second oldest in our family of 7. My dad used to refer to us as 1.5 dozen. And we all wanted to be the one, you know? Didn't want to be counted just in the 6 that were there. But I was the second oldest. This is my wife, Viola. Good-looking woman. We were married in, yeah, okay. She's reminding me it's not about us, yeah. Deane was an excellent runner when he was in high school. We grew up in Regina, Saskatchewan, and he won first prize in the mile for all of Saskatchewan. And I tried to follow him a year after, and I was miles behind him. Not as good as he was. When we were 15 and 16 years old, Deane and I worked in Banff, Alberta. What a privilege to be in this beautiful town. We were gas jockeys. We lived with a couple of other students from the Bible College, but it was an excellent experience for us. This was my main experience as a young person. In the Banff, following our time at Banff, we attended, Deane and I, we attended a ranch camp put on by InterVarsity Christian Fellowship, where we learned how to ride horses. And I'd never ridden a horse in all of my life, except the horse I tried to get on one time, and he decided to roll over and get me off. When we were there, we'd run out of money paying for this ranch camp, and so we were looking to hitchhike back to Regina from Banff. And interesting enough, a policeman stopped at RCMP and wanted to know where we were going. And I said, we're going back to Regina, Saskatchewan. Regina at that time was the head of the RCMP. So he says, well, if you see that haystack out there, you and Deane can sleep in the haystack, and I'll pick you up and I'll drive you all the way. So that's what he did.
A girlfriend in the town.
Oh yeah, that's it. My wife reminds me,
Why did they stop in a haystack?
because the policeman had a girlfriend in the town. Deane and I were paper boys for the Leader Post, and that was the only paper that we had in Regina. And Deane won a gold watch for a perfect delivery of all the papers. Never one complaint. I didn't quite qualify as that. Viola and I were missionaries in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and while we were there, Deane served as our real estate agent when we came home, because we would come on furlough every 5 years. So we have no Canadian-born children. All of our children are either born in the States or were born in the Congo. We have 4 children. So when we came back, Deane served as our real estate agent looking for a house, because you know, you come and it's very difficult to rent a house for 1 year. And he would always find us some pretty good deals. So we're appreciative of his help. Well, I think that's all I want to say. Okay. Viola? I'm going to sit down. I'm glad you're clapping your hands.
That's a hard act to follow. I'm 82 years old and I'm hearing stories I'd never heard before. I just would like to add to the Gold Watch Award. I think Deane could have also got a Gold Watch Award for learning a wonderful way to get out of doing dishes for a long time. Because 3 girls, 4 boys, they all delivered the paper. And guess who was stuck in the kitchen? Washing and drying, no dishwashers, all the dishes from that big family. So he was pretty smart back then. I was born into a receiving line of boisterous older brothers who were totally unprepared for this new baby sister. With the lengthy handle of Lois Priscilla Downey, I was surely an unwelcome intruder into their action-filled lives. God gave me the best big brothers, and later, the best younger brother and 2 younger sisters. I was right in the middle, interrupting the masculine majority in the family line. I was also gullible, the frequent object of teasing and pranks. Instead of a cute, girly nickname like perhaps Princess or Angel, I got Boney Maroney from that guy over there. Because back in those days, I was indeed pretty scrawny. Sometimes at the table, all 7 of us could be talking at the same time or talking over each other. Our spouses shared a common complaint at Downey gatherings, the difficulty of squeezing a word in edgewise into the conversation. Marrying a Downey, as I'm sure you can guess, came at a price. Deane, my oldest brother, eventually emerged as my mentor and role model. We shared a common love of language, reading, and English literature, a deep respect for the lessons of history and the gifts of its cultures and civilizations. Even though his education far surpassed mine, Deane always treated both myself and Margaret as his intellectual equals, listening carefully to our observations and opinions, or weaving our ideas into the evolving discussion. I always left Deane and Mark's home enriched, pondering new ideas we had explored together. And as one of the earlier speakers mentioned, Deane was very instrumental in helping me appreciate how our shared Christian faith had provided us with a firm foundation of understanding and appreciation of all the arts, especially literature, music, and visual expression. Deane was a major influence in shaping the woman I have become. I could say so much more about what a life force he was, but I have to share time with 2 more siblings who have tales to tell. So let me tell my 2 little tales, sweet memories of my brother. My first memory, and they're much later than Ray's, is a story I have called Mother's Ring. It occurred during the week following Mother Downey's funeral in 2011. as Lucy, Glennie, and I were sorting through Mom's jewelry, most of which was destined for the local MCC, I came across a simple gold wedding band. I remembered that Mother and Dad had exchanged new rings on their 25th anniversary because Dad had no band before that, and Mom's was quite thin after 25 years. I asked my sisters, would you mind if I took this band home to wear in memory of Mom? Go ahead, they replied, but maybe you should check with Deane first. Now, as the eldest, Deane was the meticulously honest and excruciatingly fair executor of Mother's assets. Now, if I wanted Mom's electric piano, for example, its current value would be estimated, and that amount would be deducted from my 1/7 of the inheritance funds. So I duly checked in with my brother. Deane looked the ring over quizzically and thoughtfully. Gold. We should probably get it appraised. Let me think about it, Lois. Well, he must have thought about it overnight, or else someone came to him in a dream, because the very next day, Deane made the momentous decision that Lois could take the ring home. No appraisal, no deduction. I added that shiny band to my other wedding rings and wore it home to Edmonton a few days later. A memory of my mother right there on my finger. Several days later, I was absently scratching my ring finger, which seemed to be annoyingly itchy all of a sudden. Looking down, I spotted this telltale green shadow on the skin under my rings. Thank goodness we did not show Mother's ring to an appraiser. I don't know who would have been more embarrassed, me or my meticulous and conscientious brother. I still carry Mother's ring whenever I get behind the wheel of my car, where it hangs out with my car keys. My other memory relates to Mother Downey as well, namely her favorite game, which was Scrabble. Mom successfully coached her 3 daughters to a passionate and competitive love of Scrabble. Her sons, though, not so much. Even Deane, with his fancy degrees and impressive vocabulary, remained fairly indifferent to the potential joys of pitting his brain against ours. Glennie and I married men who loved taking us on as their Scrabble opponent. Rarely did either of us emerge as the winner in games with our husbands. However, on those very infrequent occasions where Deane humored his sisters, he proved so easy to beat that we always felt quite smug about beating the so-called English expert. Again. I would like to address my final words to my beloved brother, who is with Jesus, where I know he belongs. Deane, I'm so grateful that you and I had those precious walks and talks last August, when Glennie and I came over to the island to visit you and Ray. It was almost like old times for a few shining hours that will live on in my heart. Mark had been coaching you in the art of baking perfect muffins and cookies, and you were proud of your growing expertise in the kitchen. I know that Jesus gently took you home because it was time, but I love you and I miss you. Thank you, Deane, for taking time to be not just a big brother, but an encouraging and wise mentor, a wonderful role model, and a loyal friend. In God's time, we shall meet again with a sister's heart of love for what you will always mean to me, Lois.
As we three girls have been together in the last few days, we were talking about sort of going over our speeches together to make sure we're not repetitive in what we say. We decided not to. So you might hear a few little things about Scrabble in my talk today too, of memories, but none of us got together on our thoughts, so they're deep from our heart to our dear brother Deane. To have a big brother like Deane has been a unique privilege. From my earliest memories, I literally looked up to him, not only in stature, but also for the man he was. How do I appreciate him? Let me mention 4 qualities that I admired. First of all, I admired Deane's intelligence. He was the first of my other siblings to set the bar high in Regina at Scott Collegiate. I am number 6 in the family. So when I finally went to grade 9, I had to listen to teachers expound about the Downey reputation. I had a hard act to follow. Aren't you Deane's sister? I don't think so. No. I have pleasant memories of being at he and Marg's wedding in Ottawa in 1967. He had picked a winner in Marg for sure. When they lived in Regina for a time and then Edmonton, I enjoyed visits with them when Debbie and David were quite young. When Bruce and I moved to Abbotsford in 1997, I remember playing Scrabble with him and sometimes beating him. When several of us would play this dictionary game, the person that was it would choose a word from the dictionary that he or she didn't think anyone else would know the meaning. We'd all write our definitions, and one of them had to be the right one. We'd try to convince the others to guess ours was the right one, but we always could tell which one was Deane's because he had the most big words in his definition. That's Deane's, we knew that. I also appreciated that Deane was often encouraging with his compliments. Bruce and I had moved to Surrey, BC in 1997, where we resided for 22 years. During that time, we were privileged on many occasions to be recipients of Deane and Marg's hospitality, as well as reciprocating in our home. Along with Glennie and Deane and Dave and Eleanor, we would celebrate birthdays, Christmas, Easter, and always enjoy good conversations. Deane would be sure to compliment me on the meal. I think sometimes he couldn't believe that his little sisters knew how to cook. On one weekend, Bruce and I had rented a place on Main Island when Deane came to join us. We enjoyed hiking together, good talks, playing cards and Scrabble. On other occasions at their townhouse in Abbotsford, we played ping pong, one of my favorite games. And I was able to beat Deane a few times in ping pong too. We also enjoyed some good tennis games with he and Marg, and he was hard to beat. A third quality that I appreciated Deane for was his talent. He played the violin beautifully and was also a good singer. He sang in a quartet and for about several years in his 20s, and directed and sang choirs for several years. I enjoyed hearing his string quartet and attending some of his concerts. He was also talented in his teaching at Trinity Western University, as well as Canadian Bible College. I took his journalism course when I was going to CBC, and I was reminded of the thoroughness of Deane's marking when I got my papers back. I had more red marks than I had typewritten letters. I knew he had read it thoroughly. Finally, I appreciated Deane's support. There were some challenging times in our life when Bruce was transitioning out of church ministry into full-time emergency chaplaincy. Marg and Deane were always there for us, being encouraging and prayerful about our situation. We always knew we could count on Deane and Marg being there for us. I have kept their Christmas letters over the years, especially this most recent Christmas. I was going over some of those letters and just realizing they had some profound things that they said in those letters. And this one quotation was from the words of Viktor Frankl, one who knew suffering, pain, and loss like we've never known or imagined, and yet triumphed. And looking back on his life, he was able to title one of his books, Say Yes to Life. Here is one of his quotations. We take comfort in knowing that while it often seems we humans have made a mess of much we have been given, and we have responsibility for, there also remains beauty, wonder, mystery, kindness, patience, forgiveness, generosity, healing, creativity, complexity, reverence to be given and received in spite of everything. We're reminded that these are among the things that truly create core safety in us human beings together. God help us to keep things in perspective, choosing, even if we're weary, to reach out a hand to others. Deane and Marg were examples of that. And I thank God for such a wonderful brother that Deane was, and I look forward to seeing him again one day.
I'm Glennie Tweedle. I am number 7 in the 1.5 dozen. And I used to ask my mother, why'd you have so many kids? And her response, which shut me up quickly, was, which one would you have wanted me to leave out, Glennie? Although I was only 9 years old when Deane went away to Montreal for university at McGill, I have lots of memories of my big brother. But I've chosen this one to share with you today. Did you know that Deane could be quite a tease? Maybe some of you have experienced that endearing side of his sense of humor. But I remember a time when his antics got me and my big sister Lois into a heap of trouble. It happened one evening after dinner during family devotions time. This was a sacred, no-nonsense, 30-minute or so ritual in the Murray Downey home, occurring without fail immediately following the evening meal 7 days a week. Attendance was compulsory for all 9 family members. My father would read a passage of scripture from the family Bible, do any explaining that was necessary, and then we would all kneel down beside our chairs and pray around. Well, during this particular evening, when our father was droning on, Deane was entertaining my sisters and me with facial contortions that had us initially only smiling, but then those smiles erupted into uncontrolled giggles. This was a huge no-no. Dad Downey raised his head, looked not too kindly over at Lois and me, the guilty gigglers, and ordered us up to our room, and added that he would deal with us later. Well, we knew what that meant. I was probably around 7 at the time, which would make Lois 12. We knew from bitter experience that dealing with us later would without doubt involve corporal punishment. A sound spanking in our home. Lois and I went into protective mode. I put on every pair of underpants I owned. And Lois, as I recall, patted her backside with a small Dolly's pillow. Fortunately, when Dad came upstairs sometime later, he left the hallway light on and did not turn on our bedroom light. Whew. I remember his very words. Lois, you should be ashamed of yourself for laughing during devotions. You've been a very bad example to your little sister. However, you're too old to spank. I was starting to breathe a sigh of relief, thinking I'd also mercifully escaped a spanking, when I heard, "But as for you, young lady, turn over now." I hardly even felt the ensuing hard slaps on my posterior. But of course, I produced crocodile tears for my father's benefit. I felt unjustly wounded for sure. Now, I don't recall Deane ever apologizing for that little incident, but I long ago forgave him. And he has more than compensated over the years by being the best big brother ever.
Hello, everyone. We are the grandchildren. We're gathered here to remember and honor our wonderful grandfather, Deane. And there is a lot that's worth remembering. Our grandfather was, in every sense of the word, a very intentional man. He was deliberate with his time, thoughtful with his actions, and very careful with his words. Not careful in a way that suggests hesitation or indecision, but careful in the way that told you he meant every single one of them. If 5 words happen to convey his meaning more accurately than 2, though, then 5 words were what you got, and you were always the better for it. I'll always think of how even Sudoku puzzles didn't escape his attention to detail and his keen grasp of language. We had a rather lively discussion on how the hardest difficulty rating should really be renamed. After all, we had beginner, intermediate, and difficult, which are all representative of skill and aptitude. But diabolical? Evil? In our humble yet accurate opinion, an adjective describing morality had no place among these other ratings. Diabolical was better used to describe his approach to playing Monopoly, as previously mentioned. Our traditional Monopoly games were cutthroat, and this was an arena where no grandchild status would save us from getting absolutely trounced. When the plastic bowler hats were on, all bets were off. And while many knew Grandpa as a proper academic, he also had that warm, mischievous wit that was mentioned previously. He could be a little bit cheeky with his comments, but his humor was clever and playful, but it never came at anyone else's expense. He could make a whole room smile without a single person feeling a sting. He was kind that way, genuinely, quietly, and consistently kind, not as a performance, but as a way of being. He was gentle in how he moved through the world, thoughtful in how he engaged with it and shaped his worldview, and how he engaged with the people in it as well. He had a curious mind that never stopped wondering, whether it was looking for a new idea, a new skill, a new question worth asking, and he was a teacher in the truest sense. He made you feel like your own questions and your own efforts mattered, and that you were capable of more than you knew. As mentioned, he carried that spirit of learning and curiosity all of his life, but well past any formal classroom setting, which is impressive given his years in that classroom, whether as a student, but also as a teacher and professor. Whether it was learning to speak languages, learning to bake delicious cookies, singing in choirs, playing violin, viola, piano, he filled his home with music, and his pursuit of knowledge was impressive in its own right. It also was of great benefit to us when we would try to complete the Globe and Mail's New Year's Eve crossword, which is a whole newspaper spread worth of clues. We aren't the just Google it kind of crowd. We want to know from ourselves. So whenever the clue was something obscure, like the Greek muse of history, he was the guy with the answer. If anyone's wondering, the Greek muse of history is Cleo. But Grandpa appreciated the small good things in life, whether it was a patch of sunshine and a bench swing, a bowl of ice cream, a cup of tea. In doing so, he reminded the rest of us to appreciate those things too. To this day, whenever I get good news and say, yay, 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 I'm thinking of him.
Having someone like our grandpa in your life from day one is a lucky thing. Especially as a child, that quiet influence that he carried moving through the world really shaped my understanding of my place in it, though it's something I wouldn't start to realize till years later. Together with our dear grandmother, he supported all four of us in our music education and our post-secondary journeys. This gesture of love and care has been absolutely foundational in allowing all four grandkids to pursue our passions into adulthood and throughout the rest of our lives. I'll always have fond memories of trying to play his viola as a small child or plunking away on Nana's piano. Pity the innocent bystander when the grandkids got a hold of the recorders. Even when the music lessons meant hiking through the Calgary snow and trying to thaw our fingers out, music has been a gift that's shaped each of our lives in ways that we're still feeling. There's a particular kind of person who makes the world feel steadier in it simply by being in it. Our grandfather was that kind of person. He was thoughtful, funny, warm, endlessly, genuinely interested in life. We will miss him. Miss him in crossword clues we don't know the answer to. In piano hymnals playing in the living room, and in the fireside cups of tea after dinner. We'll miss him in moments that call for exactly the kind of wisdom and insight that he always seemed to have on hand. But we'll also find him in the words that we use, curiosity we aspire to keep, and in the kindness that we try to offer, and in the particular unbeatable satisfaction of dessert. Thank you, Grandpa. I love you.
While Calvin and Betty are getting ready to play this piece, I want to just briefly introduce it. 1987, Trinity Western put on the musical Fiddler on the Roof. Well, we needed a fiddler, because if you know the music, there is this character who weaves his way through the story, wandering out on stage. Well, that was Deane. We dressed him up accordingly, and he played that famous tune that we all know out on stage as little moments during the course of the musical. So along came Deane's retirement in 2005, and the family asked David, would you write a piece of music that would just be dedicated to Deane at his retirement? Because, of course, we'd had lots to do with each other in music through the years. And so I thought, I'm going to write something. So I wrote a piece for violin. Actually, Calvin played it, and at that time, Dave Rustin played piano at the time that it was played for Deane back then in 2005. I used that great tune from Fiddler on the Roof, but I wove together a couple of other hymn tunes that were favorites of Deane's. And so the family asked again, can we hear that today? So thank you for that. I haven't heard it since 2005. So, so there's been a paucity of people that wanted to play it. Anyway, Calvin and Betty, thank you so much for playing today.
Otherwise, I just talk from here, and I want to go even further back because I want to be able to see Margaret and the family. Yeah, thank you. Oh, I remember that evening listening to that being played at Deane's retirement. That was beautiful. David, honestly, wonderful. And it brings back so many memories, but I'm not going to stray from my page because my page is important. I lived and worked at Trinity Western University with Deane, so I have learned also to be careful with my words. You will find them more economical. When I received the news of Deane's death in late January, my heart and mind were flooded with the presence of my lived experience of him as a colleague and friend for almost 50 years. My joy at his transcending the dimensions of this life with its bonds of age and decline was palpable. But I also want to say that love is not subject to those bonds, as you, his family, know. Scripture tells us that love is stronger than death. One never feels this as deeply as when death interrupts the conversations of that love. But you, dear Margaret, and his family must now face together the hard work of learning how to miss him. Although we crossed paths in Regina, where we grew up as prairie people, inured to wind and weather, and then again in Ottawa because of family connections, it was in the late 80s that Deane and I became colleagues at Trinity. Or better yet, he hired me. I have always treasured the welcome there that Deane offered in the English department with his generous wisdom. I also long respected his steadying leadership at the executive level of the university. I know I speak for others because when I asked fellow faculty what I might say on their behalf, I received beautiful comments, some of which I want to share with you. I think Deane was set to retire just as I arrived, writes one of them. He taught me how to use PowerPoint, and he kindly gave me all of his PowerPoint slides. Don't you wish it had gone away by now? I can't believe it hasn't been changed. And don't you just hate it when people put it up on the screen and then stand there and read every word? Life is too short for PowerPoint. There are other updates, but no, it stands. Well, this colleague writes, he kindly gave me all of his PowerPoint slides and his texts for my 19th century novel course. And then this is lovely. She writes, this past December, I read Thackeray's Vanity Fair with Deane's marginal notes. I realized we were friends without really knowing each other. That was a gift. And I will say something a little offside here. I am also an English professor, although a 20th century, and I have never been able to get through Vanity Fair. I refused, even when Deane, John, and Elsie Holmes were on my case for not having done it. I should have had his text with the marginal notes. This is another comment on behalf of the Inklings Institute of Canada. Some of you know who the Inklings are, C.S. Lewis et al. We so deeply appreciated Deane's enthusiastic and kind-hearted support. Then another one. I had the privilege of working with Deane as a junior college I had the privilege of working with Deane as a junior colleague for a few years, and he carried his authority with a winning combination of gravitas and kindness. Deane was universally held in high regard. Christina Batterman, a staff member who worked closely with Deane for years, would always say, he's pure gold. Another, a former student and now someone who teaches in the English department, I loved his Commonwealth literature course and still recall how enthusiastic he was about his subject. I remember Deane as a positive, encouraging man who took great interest in his students. We will remember Deane with great fondness and appreciation. Over the years, my friendship with Deane and Margaret deepened as we shared our burdens as well as our joys. Your affirming grace and ever-ready encouragement were much more important to me than you could have known. And many were the recipients of the same in your worlds of life and work. No one I know had the gifts that Deane brought to his vocation. He was an administrator who knew when to push and when to pull. I remember at a particularly tumultuous season at the university, yeah, Christians have those too, how Deane skillfully and appropriately led us carefully forward, gaining one stone at a time on the rocky path. Deane took the high road when others took the low, even at his expense. He had diplomatic skills that were called upon as he balanced the sometimes delicate relations between faculty and executive power. He was able to walk that path on a razor-thin tightrope at times. It was easy to get to know Deane because his actions and motivations were fully aligned around his Christocentric life. He was even wise enough to know in which meetings he could tune out for a little power nap. That endeared him to us all the more. He was endlessly patient and meticulous without pride or pedantry. Although I do remember grading fourth-year papers for a course we co-taught, almost pushed the limits one Christmas Eve day when I hadn't yet had time to do my Christmas gift shopping. But we posted the marks before 3 p.m. as promised. Deane's love for literature and music was very apparent. What he loved, he pursued. He showed us what wholehearted meant. He and I would sometimes debate intently at length about our various perspectives on certain poets, eventually chuckling and in the end expressing our common ground. When I took leave as a younger woman and returned to grad school, Deane cheered me on, as did our beloved friend and department chair, Elsie Holmes. Deane, Elsie, and John Annanby were the heart of the department at Trinity for decades, supporting and mentoring a core of colleagues and students, grateful to them for this to this day. I do have to say, it was like I had 5 parents, Henry and Frida Tykrod, Dr. Elsie Holmes, Dr. Downey, and Dr. John Annanby. It was a lot to answer to. During Christianity and Literature conferences in many different Canadian cities, our department colleagues would gather after particularly fascinating and sometimes perplexing presentations. The theorist, Ami Baba, a famous physicist, comes to mind. You can Google him on YouTube. At one such soiree, Deane leaned over and said to me in his humble but humorous way, "Dare I ask you what percentage of that you understood?" I said truthfully, "Be assured it was far less than you." I think of the joy and excitement that Christina Batterman, Deane's then assistant, and I had while planning his retirement banquet. It was an evening that gave us more joy than he and Margaret could ever have experienced on that occasion. None of what we planned could have possibly been enough to honor how much life force he and Margaret had spent for the university's sake and what it had cost them in commitment. Many potlucks, quick lunches, and department meetings come to my mind's memory as I reflect on the fine and faithful man Deane was to so many. He carried the presence of God in his bearing and in his soul. Thank you, Margaret, Debbie, and David, for sharing him with us. you feel that we all carry glimpses of your grief in our hearts, and may consolation accompany your reflections on your lives together. Sending the warmth of my heart to the chill of your grief. When I received your beautiful message, Deb, describing Deane's flight at dawn on the last Saturday in January, I at once recalled to mind the words of John Gillespie McGee Jr.'s evocative poem, High Flight. I am including them here as a prayer for all of you at this time of separation. And I can't stop myself from just making one little footnote here, because this is exactly the same poem that I read at my son-in-law's farewell 3 years ago, almost on this day. He died at 48, leaving my daughter a widow. I have great admiration for widows of all ages. And what I have learned from her, I hope I will be able to stand with you, Margaret. High flight. Oh, I have slipped the surly bonds of earth and danced the skies on laughter-silvered wings. Sunward I've climbed and joined the tumbling mirth of sun-split clouds, and done 100 things you have not dreamed of, wheeled and soared and swung high in the sunlit silence. Hovering there, I've chased the shouting wind along and flung my eager craft through footless halls of air, up, up the long, delirious, burning blue. I've topped like windswept heights with easy grace, where never lark or even eagle flew. And while with silent, lifting mind I've trod the high, untrespassed sanctity of space, put out my hand and touched the face of God. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here today.
Thank you, Lynn. That was beautiful. I'm not sure I chose wisely to follow something like that, but I'll do my best. I'm about to introduce a PowerPoint that I created for my father, and I'll ask for your kind indulgence. It seems somewhat ridiculous for me to try to capture my father in the constraints of digital media. I had the grateful help of many in my family and friends, and I was able to pare this down to just under 100 slides. So I'm sure it'll be next hour will be really interesting. I just wanted to mention. Oh, sorry, I forgot. So one of the memories that I have going across the country as we did in the summers and so forth was the visits with people, and often they included after-dinner slideshows. Some of you young ones won't remember this, but there were actually these things called projectors that you put a slide deck into, and it circled around, and you had a remote to turn on. So I'm just going to put this on. And the reason I'm putting this on is for those of you who've visited our home, my parents' home, you'll find that this was part of Dad's at-home outfit. So he often had a toque and a bathrobe and a vest over top of it. So I call this his thinking cap, and I put it on to welcome you to Deane and Marg's home to see a slideshow that will do its best to capture some of the great moments in Dad's life from beginning to its unfortunate end. I do also want to mention that if you have, at the end of this, found that there is some pomposity in this slideshow, I would love for you to get in touch with us and provide pictures, because Dad has a memorial site called, with Everloved, and we'd love to have more pictures that we could include on that. So please feel free to supplement, and we'll do our best to get those up. In the meantime, please enjoy this retrospective of my dear dad. Thank you.
sin, but Jesus took me in, and then a little light from heaven filled my soul. It made my heart in love and wrote my name above, and just a little talk with Jesus makes me whole. Now let us have a little talk with Jesus. Let us tell him all about our troubles. Hear our faintest cry. He will answer by and by. When you feel the Spirit moving, and you know His word is proving, you will find a little talk with Jesus makes it right. Sometimes my path seems drear without a ray of cheer, and then the cloud of doubt may hide the light of day. The mists of sin may rise and hide the starry skies, but just a little talk with Jesus clears the way. Now let us have a little talk with Jesus. Let us tell him all about our troubles. He will hear our faintest cry. He will answer by and by. When you feel the Spirit moving, and you know His word is proving, you will find a little talk with Jesus makes it right.
Place and entered in with modest grace.
The waiter, something down the hall.
Waiter Ballard down
No,
the
that
hall.
was after what he said.
That was later.
He said, I think
The bill of fare he looked into.
bill of fare he looked
A bill of fare
he looked
into to see.
what-
Oh no! He first of all he found he only 15 cents.
Yes.
His pocket, his purse, his pocket. He drew hence, and found he'd only 15 cents. His purse, his pocket. He drew hence, and found he'd only 15 cents. The bill of fare he looked into to see what 15 cents would do. The bill of fare he looked into to see what 15 cents would do. He called a waiter down the hall.
The only thing would do
Yes,
it all.
the only thing would do it all was one meatball. The only thing
would do
he
it
knew at all was one meatball. He called the waiter down the hall and softly whispered, one meatball. He called the waiter down the hall and softly whispered, one meatball.
The waiter bellowed
Down the hall. This gentleman here wants one meatball. The waiter bellowed down the hall. This gentleman here wants one meatball. Yes, some more.
It's amazing to me what kind of songs a campfire will inspire. That was beautiful. Would you please stand for the benediction? And this blessing comes from the heart of the God who wrote it through Moses in Numbers 6:24. And Deane was a recipient of the graciousness of God and the peace that came with God turning his face toward Deane and his family. And this blessing comes from God's heart through Deane and Margaret and their family to you. Just take a posture of receptivity right now with your hands open as I pronounce the benediction on you. May the Lord bless you and keep you and make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. Amen. Please wait as the ushers help the family reseed, and we will meet in the gymnasium. There are signs out there that will direct you there. The family would love for you to stay and sit around the table and share some of your favorite memories of Deane. And this is the way we grieve in a good way for the parting of somebody we love very much. So please stay, enjoy some refreshment, and recall your good memories of Deane and the good impact that he had on your life. So ushers, please escort the family